Biden's last big economic initiative, the Build Back Better trillion-dollar boondoggle, burned out like a falling star. And not entirely surprisingly, the Biden administration has cooked up a new tax proposal. Now, this tax proposal is interesting in that it seems to include a component of a wealth tax. What's a wealth tax? Well, a wealth tax should be distinguished from an income tax. In an income tax, you're taxed on the money that you earn in a given year. And in a wealth tax, you are taxed on what you own. You're taxed on what you have. Now, Biden isn't proposing exactly that people, in this case, rich people. The New York Times says billionaires. Here's the title of the New York Times article: Biden to include minimum tax on billionaires in budget proposal. But the article is contradicted by the second paragraph, which I'm now going to read. The tax would require that American households worth more than $100 million pay a rate of at least 20% on their income, as well as unrealized gains in the value of their liquid assets, such as stocks and bonds, which can accumulate value for years, but are taxed only when they are sold. Now, first of all, somebody who makes $100 million, somebody who's worth $100 million, is not a billionaire. It's time to just lay out what a billionaire is. So we all know what $1 million is. It's one with 6 zeros. 1,000 million makes $1 billion. 100 million is 1/10 of $1 billion. So the New York Times apparently doesn't know the difference. So you got this writer, Zolan Kano-Youngs. Zolan Kano-Youngs has no idea that 100 million is 1/10. So he goes, Biden to include minimum tax on billionaires. It's to fortify the Democratic rhetoric. We're going after the billionaires. They can't really say we're going after the millionaires because too many American families, including a lot of Democratic families, are millionaires, including, by the way, families like Bernie Sanders. Now, what is interesting here is that this wealth tax, and I'll talk about in what sense it is a wealth tax, picks up from people like Senator Ron Wyden, the Democrat of Oregon, or Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. They've been pushing some form of a wealth tax for years. Now, in Elizabeth Warren's case, she just wants to take these very wealthy Americans and take their net worth and charge them 1 or 2% on the total every year. So this is truly a kind of wealth tax in the classic sense. It's kind of adding up your assets, and let's say your assets are worth $300 million. You would then pay $3 million or maybe $6 million if you go to 2% per year just for having it, just for having all that dough. Now, Biden's proposal is not that. It's not just to tax wealth across the board, but rather it zooms in on stocks and bonds. And those of you who have assets in the stock market, investments in the stock market, know that if you buy a stock, let's say an Apple stock or any other type of a stock, and the stock goes up 10 or 20%, and you don't sell it, you hang on to the stock, you don't pay taxes on it right away. Even though the paper value of your money has gone up, when you sell it, then you have to calculate your gains and you pay taxes on that income. Why? Because you've actually taken it out as income. And so Biden is zooming into this. He's basically saying that, listen, if your assets go up, your investments, your stocks and bonds go up in value, your net worth has gone up, even if you haven't cashed out, even if you haven't sold that stock. So you need to pay a tax on that accumulated appreciation. But of course, part of what happens here is that stocks go up and stocks go down. So a stock may go up 20% and you haven't sold it, and the next year it goes down 20%. So you're right back to where you were before. And yet under Biden's proposal, you would pay taxes on the stock going up. Obviously, you wouldn't pay taxes, but you wouldn't get any of that money back if the stock goes back down. So you can kind of see the unfairness of it here. So look, I'm not going to be, particularly in an age when a lot of these billionaires are leftists. They're deploying their money to support the woke culture of the left. I'm not exactly sympathetic to these characters. And so any effort to raid their wealth on the part of the Democrats, it's like, listen, you voted for these guys. If they're going to go after you, you have sort of made your own bed. You lie in it. So I'm not speaking out of political sympathy for these scoundrels. They're actually on the wrong side. We don't need to sort of be crying over billionaires spending, their spilt milk. Oh, the guy had to pay an additional 7%. Who cares? But the point I want to make here is that it is what we find with these taxes, they always start. Let's start by going after in this case, again, not billionaires, but centimillionaires. Then let's go down to the millionaires. Then let's go down to people who make over $250,000 a year. So what you find is that with the Democrats, there's a kind of, let's call it tax creep. And it's a tax creep that creeps downward by starting by targeting the very rich, then the somewhat rich, then the merely well-off, and pretty soon it's every single person who earns $1 in the country. So I'm not in favor of tax creep, and I'm not exactly in favor of the creep in the White House who's proposing it either.